The massive doors of the council chamber opened with a sound like thunder. Minho walked through them, his hands shaking slightly as he carried the leather case containing Earth's most precious documents. Behind him came the small group of humans, who would decide their planet's fate. The chamber was huge, bigger than any building Minho had ever seen. The ceiling stretched up so high that clouds seemed to float near the top. Around the curved walls sat representatives from hundreds of alien species, all staring down at the humans with cold, calculating eyes. Doyen clutched his violin case tighter. The famous composer had written symphonies that made people cry with joy. Now he felt like a child about to perform for adults who had already decided they would not clap. Nari adjusted the straps holding her gyeogyum, the traditional Korean string instrument that had belonged to her grandmother. The wood was smooth and warm, polished by decades of loving hands. She wondered if the aliens would even understand what music meant to humans. High Chancellor Vextra rose from his throne-like seat. The Scarix leader was 8 feet tall, covered in dark green scales that caught the light like armor. His yellow eyes looked at the humans the way a snake might look at mice. "So," Vextra said, his voice echoing through the chamber, "these are the creatures from the third planet, the ones who call themselves human." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not kind laughter, but the sound predators make when they see something weak and helpless. Minho stepped forward. "Honorable Chancellor, we come to present the achievements of humanity. We hope to show you the beauty and value of our civilization." "Beauty?" A creature with 6 arms and purple skin let out a harsh bark. "From a species that cannot even travel between stars without our help?" More laughter. Minho felt his face grow hot, but he kept his voice steady. "We may be young in space travel, but we have created wonderful things. Our art, our music, our stories." "Music?" Vextra's scaled lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. "You brought us noisemakers? How primitive." Tajin stood quietly at the back of the group. As a communications officer, he was trained to observe and listen. He watched the alien guards positioned around the chamber. Their faces showed boredom and contempt, but something else flickered there when Vextra mentioned music. Just for a moment, some of them looked nervous. "Please," Doyen said, stepping forward with his violin, "let us show you. Music is how humans express what cannot be said with words." Vextra waved a clawed hand. "Very well. Amuse us with your primitive sounds, but be quick about it." Doyen's hands trembled as he lifted his violin. The bow touched the strings, and the first note rang out clear and pure. He played a piece he had written about Earth's sunrise, about hope and new beginnings. The melody soared and danced, telling the story of humanity's dreams. But as he played, something strange happened. Several alien guards stepped back from their positions. One Scarix soldier shook his head as if trying to clear away fog. A blue-skinned Zephyrian pressed her hands to her temples. The music ended. Silence filled the chamber. Then Vextra began to laugh. "Is that it? That chaotic noise is what you consider art?" "It's not noise," Nari said quietly. "It's the voice of our souls." "Souls?" Another alien laughed so hard he fell off his seat. "This gets better and better." Nari carefully placed her gyeogyum on the floor and sat behind it. Her fingers found the strings and she began to play an ancient Korean folk song. The melody was simple but deep, like water flowing over stones. It spoke of mountains and rivers, of families gathering under autumn moons. This time the effect on the guards was stronger. The Scarix soldiers swayed slightly as if the ground was moving beneath their feet. A few Zephyrians made soft sounds of distress, but the council members only laughed harder. "Enough," Vextra roared. "This cacophony hurts our ears. You call this civilization? This random noise?" Hana, the youngest member of their group, had been silent until now. At 19, she was already a master violinist, but her true gift was with traditional instruments. She carried her grandmother's gyeogyum, a smaller version of Nari's. "Please," Hana said, her voice breaking. "This music has been passed down through generations. It carries the memories of our ancestors." "Memories?" A creature that looked Like a walking tree made a sound like wind through dead leaves. Noise cannot carry memories. Only weak minds would believe such foolishness. Your species lacks any true artistic sense, Vextra declared. Your sounds are chaotic, random, without structure or meaning. You will be assigned to agricultural, work on the outer rim worlds. Perhaps physical labor will teach you the value of order. As the Chancellor spoke, a Scarix guard moved too close to where Nari still sat with her Gaiagium. His boot caught one of the wooden supports and the ancient instrument crashed to the floor. Strings snapped with sharp singing sounds. "Oops," the guard said, grinning to show rows of sharp teeth. Hana dropped to her knees beside the broken Gaiagium. Tears ran down her face as she gathered the pieces of wood that had been polished smooth by her grandmother's hands, her mother's hands, her own hands. "It was an accident," the guard said, but his yellow eyes showed he was lying. The other council members laughed even louder. To them it was just broken wood and wire. They could not understand that they had just destroyed something that connected Hana to every woman in her family who had ever lived. "Take them away," Vexitra ordered, "and make sure they understand their place. No more noise-making. Humans are here to work, not to disturb their betters with primitive sounds." As the guards led them from the chamber, Tejan caught sight of something interesting. The Scarix soldier who had broken the Gaiagium was walking unsteadily as if he was dizzy. Another guard was rubbing his head, looking confused. Tejan filed this information away. In his experience, small details often became important later. Massive doors closed behind them with a sound like the end of the world. In the corridor, Hana still held pieces of her grandmother's Gaiagium, crying quietly. Minho put his hand on her shoulder, but he had no words of comfort. They had come to show the galaxy the beauty of humanity. Instead, they had learned that, in this new world, their greatest treasures were seen as nothing more than noise. But sometimes noise could be more powerful than silence. Sometimes what others called chaos could shake the foundations of the most ordered empire. Tejan looked back at the closed doors and smiled grimly. The aliens had made their first mistake. They had underestimated the power of human music. That mistake would cost them everything. 3 months had passed since the day in the council chamber. 3 months of working in the alien city, cleaning their buildings and translating their messages. Tejan sat at his desk in the translation department, staring at lines of alien text that meant nothing to most humans. But Tejan was good with languages. He had learned to read Scarix, Zephyrian, and even some of the clicking sounds that the collective used to communicate. What he was reading now made his hands shake. The aliens did not speak the way humans did. They did not just use words. Their entire communication system was based on harmonic frequencies, like music, but much more complex. When a Scarix wanted to say, "attack," he did not just make a sound. He created a specific frequency pattern that other Scarix could feel, in their bones. Tejan rubbed his eyes and read the communication logs again. Every alien message was basically a song. Their thoughts moved through their minds like melodies. Their emotions played out like symphonies. A soft knock on his door interrupted his reading. Yuna stepped into the room, carrying a bucket and mop. She had been a physicist back on Earth, one of the smartest people in her field. Now she cleaned alien toilets for 12 hours a day. "Any interesting translations today?" she asked quietly. Tejan looked around to make sure no guards were listening. "Yuna, I think I found something important. Look at this." He showed her the communication patterns he had been studying. Yuna's eyes went wide as she recognized what she was seeing. "These are sound waves," she whispered. "But not like human speech. These are musical frequencies." "Exactly. They think in music. Their whole civilization runs on harmonic communication." Yuna set down her mop and studied the data more carefully. Her mind, trained in physics and mathematics, quickly understood what this meant. "If they think in musical patterns," she said slowly, "then other musical patterns might confuse them, like interference." Tejan nodded. "Remember how some of the guards acted strange when Doyun and Nari played for the council? I thought they just didn't like our music. But what if it actually hurt them somehow? We need to test this, Yuna said, but carefully. The next day, Tai-Jin met with Jinwoo in the waste disposal area where he worked. Jinwoo had been a music teacher on Earth. Now he spent his days sorting alien garbage, but he still carried a small harmonica in his pocket. I have an idea, Tai-Jin said, but I need you to trust me. He explained his theory about alien communication. Jinwoo listened carefully, then pulled out his harmonica. So you want me to play this near some guards and see what happens? Just a simple tune, nothing complex. We need to see if human music really affects them. Jinwoo looked nervous, but he nodded. When the next Scarix patrol walked by, he began to play a gentle folk melody his father had taught him. The tune was simple and peaceful, the kind of song humans might hum while working. The effect was immediate. The lead Scarix guard stopped walking and shook his head violently. The second guard stumbled and walked straight into a wall. The third guard made a hissing sound and pressed his clawed hands to his head. "Stop that noise!" The lead guard shouted in broken human language. "Hurts thinking." Jinwoo quickly put away the harmonica. The guard stumbled away, still looking, confused and angry. "Did you see that?" Jinwoo whispered. They couldn't walk straight. Tai-Jin felt his heart racing. His theory was correct. Human music interfered with alien thought patterns, but he needed more data. Over the next few weeks, the three humans began careful experiments. They discovered that different types of music affected different alien species in different ways. Classical music made the logical Scarix confused and clumsy. Rock and heavy metal completely overwhelmed the emotional Zephyrians, making them cry or run away. Jazz music was the worst for the collective, who thought as a group mind. When Jinwoo played jazz on his harmonica, nearby collective workers would start arguing with each other, their group thinking broken apart. But the most interesting discovery came from Yuna's physics background. She realized that the aliens' technology was also based on harmonic frequencies. Their computers, their weapons, their communication systems, everything worked through musical patterns. If human music can confuse their minds, she told Tai-Jin, it might also be able to confuse their machines. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Nari was making her own discoveries. The resistance movement was trying to send secret messages between human settlements, but the aliens always seemed to detect their communications. Every coded message was intercepted and decoded. But when Nari began incorporating traditional Korean melodies into the message structure, something strange happened. The alien monitoring systems could not detect them. It was as if the musical elements made the messages invisible to alien technology. She started teaching other resistance members how to hide messages in folk songs. A work song about planting rice might actually contain information about guard positions. A lullaby could carry details about weapon shipments. The aliens heard the songs, but to them, they were just more human noise. They had no idea that the primitive melodies carried the seeds of rebellion. One evening, Tai-Jin received a coded message from Earth. It was hidden in the melody of an old Korean song about mountains and rivers. As he decoded it, he realized that resistance cells all over the galaxy were starting to use music for secret communication. Humans were naturally good at hearing patterns in music. They could recognize a melody even when it was played in different keys or at different speeds. But aliens could not. To them, a song played one way was completely different from the same song played another way. This gave humans a huge advantage. They could communicate right under the aliens' noses, using the very thing the aliens had mocked as worthless noise. Yuna began developing ways to turn everyday human music into weapons. She discovered that certain frequencies could make Scarix weapons malfunction. Others could cause Zephyrian computers to crash. Still others could break the mental connections that kept collective groups working together. But they had to be careful. If the aliens discovered what they were doing, the consequences would be terrible. So they worked in secret, pretending to be obedient workers while they learned to use humanity's greatest gift as a tool of war. Tai-Jin looked at the data he had collected and felt a cold smile cross his face. The aliens had made a terrible mistake when they dismissed human music as chaos and noise. They had no idea that chaos could be the most powerful force in the universe. Music was mathematics. Music was emotion. Music was communication. Music was memory, and now music would be humanity's weapon. The aliens had laughed at Earth's songs. Soon, those same songs would bring their empire to its knees. The only question was whether humanity could organize the resistance before the aliens realized what was happening. Time was running out, but the symphony of rebellion was just beginning to play its first notes. The abandoned subway tunnels beneath Nexus Prime had not been used for decades, perfect for Minho's growing network of human rebels. He stood in the main tunnel, watching as humans from across the city gathered in the darkness. Former teachers, musicians, scientists, and workers, all united by their shared anger and their secret weapon. Su-min arrived carrying what looked like a simple music player, but Taejin knew it was much more than that. The former K-pop producer had spent weeks learning how alien entertainment systems worked. Now she could hide musical weapons inside innocent-looking songs and broadcasts. "I've been testing the frequency modulators," she whispered to Minho. "We can embed disruption patterns into regular music and broadcast them across the city. The aliens will think they're just listening to Earth entertainment." Doyen set up his conductor's stand in the center of the tunnel. Around him, 50 human musicians prepared their instruments. Violins, guitars, flutes, drums. Instruments the aliens had tried to ban as noisemakers. Tonight they would become the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. "Remember," Doyen said quietly, "this is not just about making beautiful music. Every note we play tonight is a weapon. Every harmony is an attack on their systems." Nari tuned, her new Gayagam, built from scraps and memory to replace the one the guard had broken. The strings were not perfect, but they sang with the same voice as her grandmother's instrument. Near the tunnel entrance, Kyung arranged his traditional Korean drums. He had discovered something important about percussion. The steady beats could interfere with alien technology even more than melodies. The rhythmic patterns seemed to break apart the harmonic frequencies that alien machines needed to function. Wonho connected his electronic equipment to the tunnel's old power systems. His setup looked like a DJ booth, but each device had been modified to generate sonic attacks. Bass frequencies that could shatter Scaric's armor, high frequencies that could overload Zephyrian nervous systems, complex rhythms that could break collective group minds apart. "Is everyone ready?" Minho asked. Around the tunnel, heads nodded. These humans had lost their homes, their freedom, their dignity, but they had not lost their music. And tonight, they would use that music to strike back. Doyun raised his baton. The first piece would be his own composition, written specifically to affect all three major alien species at once. He had studied Taejin's data carefully, learning exactly which frequencies would cause the most disruption. The music began softly, a gentle melody from Nari's Gaiageum, joined by quiet strings and woodwinds. Above ground, alien guards would hear nothing unusual, just more human noise drifting up from the abandoned areas. But as the piece continued, more instruments joined, and the harmony became more complex. Wonho's electronic beats created mathematical patterns that alien computers could not process. Kyung's drums added rhythms that broke apart alien thought patterns. 20 minutes into the performance, the first signs of success appeared. The tunnel's lights, connected to the city's main power grid, began to flicker. Somewhere above, alien systems were starting to malfunction. 30 minutes in, emergency sirens began wailing across the city. Computer systems were crashing. Communication networks were going dark. The carefully ordered alien civilization was being torn apart by human music. But the cost was high. 3 musicians collapsed from exhaustion. The sonic weapons were as hard on human ears as on alien systems. Blood ran from Wonho's nose as he pushed his equipment to maximum power. "Keep playing," Doyen shouted over the growing chaos. "We're winning." Above ground, Scaric's guards stumbled through dark streets, their advanced weapons useless without working targeting systems. Zephyrian administrators wept uncontrollably as their emotional control networks overloaded. Collective work groups fell, apart as individual members suddenly found themselves thinking alone for the first time in their lives. The music reached its climax. Every instrument played together in a harmony so complex that human minds could barely follow it. But alien minds could not follow it at all. The city's main power grid shut down. In the sudden darkness and silence, the humans stopped playing. For a moment, no one moved. Then Minho began to laugh. "We did it," he said. "We actually did it." But their celebration was cut short by the sound of boots in the tunnel. Scaric's soldiers had found their entrance, guided by emergency torches that still worked. "Run!" Minho shouted. The musicians scattered through the maze of tunnels, carrying their instruments with them. Suman grabbed her equipment and disappeared into a side passage. Kyung and 3 other drummers went another way, their drums echoing through the underground. Hana found herself running beside Nari, both of them carrying their gayagums. The older woman moved slower, but she refused to leave her instrument behind. "This way," Hana whispered, pulling Nari into a narrow maintenance tunnel. Behind them, they could hear the guards shouting in their own language. The words sounded angry and confused. The music had affected the soldiers too, making it hard for them to think clearly. Most of the musicians escaped, but the cost was real. 7 humans were captured, including 2 of the violinists. Wonho lost half of his electronic equipment, and the aliens now knew that humans were behind the mysterious technical failures. The next morning, High Chancellor Vextra called an emergency session of the council. His scaled face showed anger and something else, fear. "The humans are doing something," he announced. "Their primitive noise is somehow interfering with our systems." A Zephyrian counselor nodded, her blue skin pale with exhaustion. "My people reported severe emotional distress during the incident. Many are still recovering. The collective requests permission to eliminate all human musicians," clicked a representative of the hive mind. "They pose a threat to group unity." But Vexitra held up a clawed hand. "No, not yet. First, we must understand how they are doing. Then we will stop them permanently." In the human quarters, word of the attack spread quickly. People whispered about the brave musicians who had brought the mighty alien empire to its knees, even if only for one night. Taejin met with the surviving members of the network in a new location, an abandoned warehouse where Jinwoo worked. The mood was mixed. They had proven that musical warfare could work, but they had also shown their hand too early. "The aliens will be watching for this now," Yuna warned. "We won't be able to surprise them again." Minho nodded grimly. "Then we'll have to be smarter and stronger." Doyen looked at his remaining musicians. Half were injured or missing. Their instruments were damaged, but their faces showed determination, not defeat. "I'm already working on the next composition," he said. "Something bigger, something that will hit every alien world at the same time." Suman, nursing a cut on her forehead from the escape, smiled tiredly. "I can set up a broadcast network, hide the transmission in regular entertainment channels, and I can teach more people to use traditional instruments as weapons," Nari added. "Every human in the galaxy should know how to fight with music." Outside the warehouse, alien patrols searched for the rebels, but inside, the humans planned their next symphony of war. They had learned an important lesson. Their music was not just noise, it was not just art. It was hope. It was resistance. It was the sound of freedom fighting back. The Empire had made humanity into slaves. But slaves who could sing would not stay slaves for long. The underground symphony was growing stronger, and soon it would shake the foundations of alien power across the galaxy. The war had begun, and it would be fought with the most human weapon of all, the music that lived in their hearts. The raid came at dawn when most humans were sleeping after their long work shifts. Scarrick soldiers burst through the doors of the housing complex where Wonho lived, their weapons charged and ready. They had been hunting the musical rebels for weeks, and finally they had found what they were looking for. Wonho tried to hide his sonic equipment behind a false wall, but the soldiers had new detection devices that could sense harmonic frequencies. Within minutes they found everything. The modified speakers, the frequency generators, the recordings of human music that could bring down alien systems. "Seize it all," ordered Captain Thexvar, the Scarix officer leading the raid. "And arrest every human in this building." Wonho was dragged from his room in chains, but he was not afraid for himself. He was afraid for what his capture would reveal. The aliens would study his equipment. They would learn how humans had turned music into weapons. The secret that had kept humanity fighting would be exposed. High Chancellor Vextra stood over the captured sonic weapons, his yellow eyes bright with anger and understanding. For weeks, mysterious technical failures had plagued the Empire. Power grids crashed. Communication networks went dark. Even their most advanced starships suffered system malfunctions. Now, he knew why. These devices turned their primitive sounds into weapons, he said to the assembled council. They have been using their noise to attack our technology. Dr. Kelkson, the Empire's chief scientist, examined one of Wanho's frequency generators. The mathematical patterns are quite sophisticated. They have learned to disrupt our harmonic networks. How is this possible? Demanded a Zephyrian counselor. They are a primitive species. They barely understand space travel. Vextra's claws scraped against the metal table. We underestimated them. Their chaotic thinking patterns give them an advantage we did not expect. The truth was worse than the council wanted to admit. Human music was not just interfering with alien technology. It was interfering with alien minds. The random emotional patterns of human songs could break apart the logical thought structures that held their civilization together. What do you recommend? Asked the collective representative. Vextra's answer was swift and brutal. Eliminate all human musicians. Destroy their instruments. Ban the production or performance of human music across all Empire worlds. The order went out that same day. On every planet where humans lived, alien soldiers began hunting down anyone with musical ability. Teachers who had taught children to sing, workers who hummed while they labored. Anyone caught with an instrument was arrested immediately. Kyung was performing a secret concert in the mining colonies of Zarian Prime when the soldiers came. He had been teaching the miners how to use work songs as coded messages, how to hide rebellion in the rhythm of their hammers and tools. The Scarix burst into the underground chamber where 50 humans had gathered to learn. Kyung saw them coming and made a choice that saved many lives. He grabbed his largest drum and began to play a thunderous rhythm, not a song, but a warning signal that echoed through the mine tunnels. The other humans scattered into the maze of mining passages as Kyung's drums grew louder and faster. The rhythm was so powerful that the Scarix soldiers stumbled and fell, their inner ears disrupted by the percussive assault. But there were too many soldiers. Eventually, they overwhelmed the old drummer. Kyung died still playing, his hands bloody on the drumheads, his final rhythm a message of defiance that would be remembered by every human who heard it. Sumin's end came differently but with equal courage. She had been broadcasting musical attacks through the Empire's entertainment networks, hiding sonic weapons inside popular alien shows. Her broadcasts reached millions of viewers across dozens of worlds. When the soldiers found her transmission station, she was in the middle of uploading her masterpiece, a musical virus that would spread through every entertainment system in the Empire, turning alien technology against itself. Surrender now and your death will be quick, Captain Thexvar told her. Sumin looked at her computer screen. The upload was at 90%. I have a better idea, she said, and pressed the final activation key. The musical virus exploded across the galactic network like a digital plague. Entertainment systems crashed. News broadcasts turned into chaos. Even military communications were affected as the virus spread from network to network. Sumin died in the explosion that destroyed her station, but her last act of defiance crippled alien communications for days. News of the attacks on human musicians spread quickly through the resistance networks. But instead of crushing the rebellion, the violence made it stronger. Humans who had never thought of themselves as fighters began to see music as their weapon against oppression. Minho coordinated the response from his new headquarters on the agricultural world of Kepler 7. The aliens had thought farming worlds would be quiet and controllable. They had not expected farmers to organize one of the most effective resistance movements in galactic history. They want to silence our music, Minho said to the assembled cell leaders, but they cannot silence what is in our hearts. Taejin had developed new communication protocols that used traditional folk melodies as encryption keys. Each resistance cell learned different songs from different Earth cultures. African rhythms, Celtic melodies, Chinese opera, Native American chants. The diversity of human music became an unbreakable code. Every song our ancestors sang is now a weapon, Tejan explained. Every lullaby our mothers hummed is now a secret message. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Una had been studying captured alien technology, trying to understand how their harmonic systems worked. What she discovered changed everything. They're not just using music for communication, she told Minho excitedly. Music is how they think. It's how they feel. It's how they control their entire population. She showed him the data on her hidden computer. The Empire used massive harmonic broadcasting stations to keep their citizens obedient. Every alien world was flooded with subtle musical frequencies that promoted loyalty, suppressed independent thinking, and maintained social order. If we can capture one of those stations, Una said, we can turn their own system against them. The Yao plan was ambitious and dangerous. They would need to coordinate attacks on multiple worlds simultaneously. They would need to capture alien broadcasting equipment without destroying it, and they would need to do it all while being hunted by every soldier in the Empire. But they had one advantage the aliens did not expect. Humans had been scattered across dozens of worlds as slave labor. The aliens thought this would make them weak and divided. Instead, it gave them a resistance network that spanned the galaxy. On the industrial world of Titan's Gate, Hana led a team of musicians in an assault on the main harmonic control center. Her grandmother's Gaia Giam had been replaced with a modern electronic version that could generate frequencies powerful enough to shatter alien armor. As Scarrick's guards tried to stop them, Hana played a song her grandmother had taught her, a lullaby about mountain flowers that somehow became a weapon of incredible power. The guards fell to their knees, their scaled hands pressed to their heads as the simple melody tore through their mental defenses. On the mining world of Xerion Prime, workers led by Jinwu used mining equipment to create massive percussion instruments. The sound of 1,000 hammers striking in rhythm could be heard from orbit, and every beat carried encoded messages to resistance cells across the sector. On the research station of Nova Labs, Nari and a team of traditional musicians performed a concert that lasted for 6 hours straight. The complex harmonies overloaded the station's computer systems and freed hundreds of alien scientists from the mental control that had kept them loyal to the Empire. But the most important battle took place on Nexus Prime itself, where Doyen was preparing his greatest composition. The Symphony for Liberation would combine every form of human music into a single, overwhelming assault on alien consciousness. As reports of successful attacks came in from across the galaxy, Vextra realized that his empire was facing something it had never encountered before, an enemy that fought with beauty instead of weapons, with art instead of violence. How do we fight an enemy that uses songs as bullets? He asked his generals. None of them had an answer. The war had entered its most dangerous phase. The aliens were desperate and angry, willing to destroy entire worlds to stop the musical rebellion. But humanity was no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the right to sing, to create, to be human. And across the galaxy, that song of freedom was growing louder every day. The rebellion was spreading faster than wildfire across the galaxy. On world after world, the Empire's control was crumbling as human music shattered the harmonic networks that held their civilization together. Planets that had been loyal for centuries suddenly declared independence. Alien species that had been enslaved for generations found their mental chains broken by the chaotic beauty of human songs. Hana stood on the bridge of the captured warship, Song of Earth, watching as her fleet approached the Outer Rim territories. The ship's weapons had been replaced with massive sonic projectors that could broadcast human music across entire star systems. Each vessel in her fleet carried the same modifications. They were not ships of war, but ships of liberation. Begin the broadcast, she ordered. Across the fleet, speakers came alive with the sound of human music. Classical symphonies mixed with electronic beats, traditional folk songs blended with rock and jazz. The music poured out into space, carried by radio waves that would reach every inhabited world in the sector. On the planet Korvax, Scarrick's garrison troops suddenly found themselves unable to think straight, as Beethoven's Ninth Symphony flooded their communication networks. On the mining world of Xerion Beta, collective workers began thinking as individuals for the first time, as the complex rhythms of John Coltrane broke apart their shared consciousness. But the real target was not the outer rim. It was Nexus Prime itself, the capital world where this war had begun. Deep beneath the city in tunnels that now served as humanity's command center, Doyun made final preparations for his masterpiece. The Symphony for Liberation was more than just music. It was a mathematical weapon designed to target every known alien neural frequency at once. Minho coordinated with resistance cells across the capital, humans who had spent months learning to use everyday objects as musical instruments were now positioned throughout the city. Janitors with hidden harmonicas, food service workers with modified kitchen utensils that could generate precise frequencies. Even children had been taught songs that could disrupt alien technology. Taejin monitored alien communications from his hidden facility. The reports coming in from across the Empire painted a picture of total chaos. The Zephyrians are retreating from 12 systems, he reported. The collective has lost contact with 18 hive clusters. Even some Scarix worlds are declaring neutrality. Yuna made final adjustments to the quantum resonance amplifiers that would carry Doyun's symphony across the entire planet. The harmonic frequencies are aligned, she announced. When we begin, every alien on Nexus Prime will hear this music whether they want to or not. But they were not the only ones preparing for battle. High Chancellor Vextra had gathered the Empire's most powerful warships around the capital world. Sonic dampeners had been installed throughout the city. Elite troops wore special armor designed to block human musical attacks. Today we end this. Noise once and for all, Vextra declared to his assembled forces. No more will we tolerate the chaos these humans bring. Their songs of rebellion end now. The final battle began at sunset. Vextra's forces surrounded the human quarters, sonic dampeners humming as they tried to create zones of silence. But the humans had learned to fight in silence too. Nari crept through the city's ventilation systems, her rebuilt Gaiagium slung across her back. The instrument looked simple, but Yuna had hidden quantum resonance generators in the wooden frame. When Nari played, the music would not just fill the air, it would fill the quantum space between atoms, impossible to block or stop. She reached her target, the central communication hub that connected Nexus Prime to the rest of the Empire. Alien guards protected the building, but they could not protect against what was coming. Nari began to play. The melody was the same lullaby her grandmother had taught her, about flowers growing on distant mountains. But now it carried new meaning. It was a song about hope growing in impossible places, about beauty surviving in the darkest times. The music bypassed every sonic dampener, every protective system the aliens had built. It went straight into their minds, their machines, their quantum networks. Across the city, communication systems began to fail as the simple melody overwrote their harmonic programming. At the same moment, Doyun raised his baton in the underground chamber. Around him, 200 human musicians prepared to play their final song. This was not just an orchestra. It was the voice of an entire species, speaking in harmony for the first time. The Symphony for Liberation began. It started softly, with just a few instruments playing themes from different human cultures. African drums spoke to Celtic flutes. Chinese erhu sang with Mexican guitars. Native American flutes called to Indian sitars. Every musical tradition of Earth was represented, and they were all saying the same thing. We are here. We are free. We will not be silenced. Above ground, the effect was immediate and devastating. Scarix soldiers fell to their knees as their logical thought patterns collapsed under the musical assault. Zephyrian officers wept uncontrollably as their emotional control systems overloaded. Collective units broke apart into confused individuals, their shared consciousness shattered by the chaotic beauty of human creativity. But Vextra was not defeated yet. Protected by the most advanced sonic armor his scientists could build, he fought his way through the chaos toward the source of the music. His guards fell behind him, overwhelmed by the symphony, but his armor held. He burst into the council chamber where this war had begun. carrying a sonic weapon designed to destroy any musical instrument within a mile radius. If he could silence the symphony at its source, the Empire might still survive. But when he entered the chamber, he found Minho waiting for him. "You came back to where it all started," Minho said calmly. "Good. This is where it should end." Vextra raised his weapon, but before he could fire, another figure stepped into the chamber. It was Hana carrying her grandmother's Gaiagium, not the broken one from months ago, but a new one, built with love and hope and the promise of freedom. "You destroyed my grandmother's instrument," she said quietly. "You laughed at our music. You called us primitive." Vextra's finger tightened on the trigger, but Hana was already playing. The song was simple, a child's lullaby about stars and dreams, but it carried the weight of every human who had ever looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. It carried the hope of every person who had ever sung in the dark to keep fear away. Vextra's sonic armor began to crack. The weapon fell from his claws as the simple melody found its way through every defense he had built. His scaled face showed something no Scarix had felt in 1,000 years: wonder. For the first time in his life, Vextra understood what music truly was. Not noise, not chaos, but the mathematical expression of emotion, the harmonic representation of hope itself. His mind, trained in logic and order, could not process the beautiful contradiction of human music. He collapsed, his neural networks, overwhelmed by the realization that everything he had believed about art and chaos and order was wrong. Across the city, across the planet, across the galaxy, the symphony for liberation reached its crescendo. Every human voice joined in, every human heart beat in rhythm. The song rose from the tunnels of Nexus Prime to the farming colonies of distant worlds, from the mining ships in asteroid belts to the research stations orbiting far suns. And as the music swelled, something unexpected happened. Other voices began to join in. Alien species that had been enslaved by the Empire for generations found their own voices again. Zephyrians sang their ancient emotional songs. Collective individuals discovered the joy of solo performance. Even some Scarix began to experiment with musical expression for the first time in their species' history. The Galactic Empire officially surrendered 3 days later. The surrender ceremony took place in the same council chamber where humanity had been humiliated months before. But now the chamber was filled with music. Representatives from hundreds of species brought their own musical traditions to share. The room that had once echoed with mockery now resonated with harmony. Tajin stood at the podium where Vextra had once ruled, but he did not speak of conquest or victory. Instead, he spoke of the new organization he was founding. The Galactic Council of Harmonies, where every species would have a voice and every song would be heard. "We are not here to replace one empire with another," he said. "We are here to create something new, a galaxy where diversity is celebrated, where different voices create richer music." The former High Chancellor Vextra sat in the audience, his mind forever changed by his encounter with human music. He had lost his empire, but he had gained something more valuable, an understanding of beauty that his species had never known. Years later, when historians tried to understand how a primitive species had defeated the greatest empire in galactic history, they focused on technology and strategy and military tactics. But they missed the real answer. Humanity had won because they had never stopped singing. In the end, Hana established the Universal Conservatory on Earth, where beings from across the galaxy came to learn about music and art and the mathematical beauty of creative expression. Her first students included young Scarix who wanted to learn about emotion, Zephyrians who sought to understand logic, and collective individuals discovering the joy of independent thought.